BBC News at midday. New figures show that there was a marked fall in drug deaths in Scotland last year, but the number is still far above the UK average. There were 1,051 deaths, 279 fewer than the year before. Our Scotland correspondent James Shaw reports.
According to National Records of Scotland, this is the lowest number of drug deaths since 2017. It's also the biggest decrease year on year that they've recorded since the late 1990s. The total also fell slightly between 2020 and 21, so it could be the start of a downward trend. Scottish ministers will certainly hope so. They have described it as a national mission to tackle problem drug use in Scotland, which is still worse than in other parts of the UK. The latest comparable figures indicate that in 2021, the death rate in Scotland was still 2.7 times higher than the UK as a whole.
There are calls for a rethink about how prostate cancer is screened in the UK. A team at University College London has been carrying out a small study which found that an MRI scan was better at spotting cancers than the existing blood tests. The researchers say more research is needed and they'll be conducting further studies with a larger group of men. The Education Secretary, Gillian Keegan, says the inquiry into the murder of 7 babies by Lucy Letby should consider whether NHS managers need to be regulated in the same way as doctors and nurses. Repeated warnings about Letby's conduct were raised by doctors at the Countess of Chester Hospital, but they say managers ignored them. An NHS spokesperson said it was vital everyone felt they could raise concerns and that new guidance had been issued to health service leaders. Gillian Keegan said it seemed sensible that tighter regulation of NHS managers should be examined.
I think that's something that should be part of the inquiry. I mean, obviously, not only are there the answers that families need and families deserve, but there are also clearly going to be lessons that need to be learned from this case. So I think the inquiry will be something, that hopefully can look at that in great detail.
The Pakistani military is trying to rescue 8 people, including 6 children, who are stuck in a cable car dangling precariously above a riverbed in a mountainous region of the country. The children were on their way to school when 2 cables of the aerial trolley snapped. Officials say the cable car is privately run by locals to cross a river as there are no roads or bridges. More than 60 patients have been moved from a hospital in Alexandroupolis in northeastern Greece, which is threatened by wildfires. Some of them have been transferred to a ferry. The blazes have been burning out of control for 4 days. Danny Aberard reports.
Video shot overnight from within the hospital shows a wall of flame on a nearby hillside. Some of the facility's patients are now being treated while lying on mattresses on the ferry floor or sitting up in its chairs, some attached to oxygen cylinders and drips. Firefighters are having to tackle blazes in a number of locations across Greece simultaneously. They're warning that today and Wednesday are extremely critical, with gale-force winds and high temperatures complicating the situation.
The English Chess Federation has welcomed the announcement of new funding to support elite competitors and encourage more people to take up the game. The government says a £1 million package will include money for local authorities to put chessboards in public parks and grants to schools. The Federation said it could be transformational. Jude Shearsby, who's 13, is one of the top junior chess players in England. He says he took it up aged 4 after watching a YouTube video.
The amount of possibilities and how accessible it was, and it's just thought I may as well give it a go and then join the chess club. And yeah, I've been to Latvia, Slovakia, and just to play for England in the World Youth Chess Championships. It doesn't, from afar, it doesn't look fun, but it definitely is.
BBC News.
This is BBC Radio 4. The latest Today debates will take place this evening. Michelle Hussein and her guests will discuss plans to end the sale of new petrol and diesel vehicles by 2030. That'll be live on Radio 4 and BBC Sounds at 8 p.m. We're live now, live with Winifred Robinson, who has this week's edition of Call You and Yours.
Hi, welcome to the programme. We're also talking about cars and emissions. We want to talk about low emission zones today, those places where you have to pay a charge to drive a polluting vehicle. What impact are low emission zones having on you? Call us. Here's the number, 03700 100 444. Low emission zones are being set up in cities where the legal limits for air pollution are being breached. They're a quick way to try to tackle it. Despite the opposition, the Greater London Zone is going ahead. It's starting next Tuesday, but Greater Manchester Zone has been postponed and is under review. Call now. Tell us what impact low emission zones are having on you. Ring 03700 100 444. We've got callers already. Wally Taylor on the line in Birmingham, Maureen Wright in Bristol and Tim Scarborough, who is in Bewdley in the West Midlands. Hi, and please do feel free to speak to each other as well as to me. And Wally, let's start with you then. Tell me, what effect are low emission zones having on you in Birmingham?
Good afternoon, Winifred.
Hi.
Yeah, Birmingham is sort of unique in a way that it's the centre of the country's motorway system. And at the end of the A38, you now enter the clean air zone, the A38M, which joins the motorways. And you are forced onto the middle ring road from there if your vehicle is non-compliant, turning what is a journey of about 10 minutes through the Queensway tunnels, which go underneath the city centre rather than through it, into a 45-minute journey around the ring road. If you go through the tunnels, you have priority all the way to the edge of the clean air zone on the other side, except at one junction, which is a pedestrian crossing. And to use the ring road, I think there's 25 junctions where you do not have priority.
So, Wally, is that what you do? If you're driving towards the centre of Birmingham, is that what you do in your car? Rather than pay the charge, you would take a detour on the outer ring road. Is that right?
Yes, exactly. I've used the clean air zone, I think, 3 times since it was imposed on us.
What do you have to pay to use it?
£8.
Okay, so tell me about the car then that you're driving, or the van, or whatever it is.
I drive a 2012 Berlingo diesel, which is non-compliant. But I also ride a 1927 motorcycle that is compliant.
And couldn't you do anything about that car? You wouldn't consider changing it? There wasn't a scrappage scheme you could have signed up to?